there, Mama Bear here. Welcome to the Chill Zone. If you're returning to the Chill Zone, welcome back. If you're new here, welcome. And a word of advice. Please don't drive or operate machinery while listening to this video. My voice can be sedating. Today, I have a very special story for everyone that I dedicate to Cindy. This story was one of the first things she got to hear with her new cochlear implant, implanted January 19th, 2024, activated February 15th, 2024. I say these dates with happiness because this is a person that inspired me to do more with this channel. Cindy's first words she heard were from me. The story, Thumbelina, was the first thing she heard. I will fair warn, I have not to edit this one. This is fairly off script before I had my prompter. I will go back and fix this after a time, but for now, here it is in the raw. Thumbelina. There was once a woman who wanted to have quite a tiny little child, but she did not know where to get one from. So one day she went to an old witch and said to her, "I should so much like to have a tiny little child. Can you tell me where I can get one?" "Oh, we have just got one ready," said the witch. "Here is a barley corn for you. But it's not the kind of farmer sows in his field, or feeds the cocks and hens with, I can tell you. Put it in a flower pot, and then you'll see something happen." "Oh, thank you," said the woman, and gave the witch a shilling, for that was what it cost. Then she went home and planted the barley corn. Immediately there grew out of it a beautiful, large flower, which looked like a tulip, but the petals were tightly closed, as if it were still only a bud. "What a beautiful flower!" exclaimed the woman, as she kissed the red and yellow petals. But as she kissed them, the flower burst open. It was a real tulip, such as one could see any day, but in the middle of the blossom, on the green velvety petals, sat a little girl, quite tiny, trim, and pretty. She was scarcely half a thumb in height, so they called her Thumbelina. An elegant polished walnut shell served Thumbelina as a cradle. The blue petals of a violet were her mattress, and a rose leaf her coverlid. There she lay as night, but in the daytime she used to play about on the table. Here the woman had put a bowl surrounded by a ring of flowers with their stalks in the water, in the middle of which floated a great tulip petal, and on this Thumbelina sat, and sailed from one side of the bowl to the other, rowing herself with two fine white horsehairs for oars. It was such a pretty sight. She could sing, too, with a voice more soft and sweet than had ever been heard before. One night, when she was lying in her pretty little bed, an old toad crept in through the broken pane in the window. She was very ugly, clumsy, and clammy. She hopped onto the table where Thumbelina lay asleep under the red rose leaf. "This would make a beautiful wife for my son," said the toad, taking up the walnut shell with Thumbelina inside and hopping with it through the window into the garden. There flowed a great wide stream, with slippery and marshy banks. Here the toad lived with her son. Ugh! How ugly and clammy he was, just like his mother. "Croak, croak, croak," was all he could say when he saw the pretty little girl in the walnut shell. "Don't talk so loud, or you'll wake her," said the old toad. "She might escape us even now. She is light as a feather. We will put her at once on a broad water lily in the stream. This will be quite an island for her. She is so small and light. She can't run away from us there, while we are preparing the guest chambers under the marsh where she will live." Outside the brook grew many water lilies with broad green leaves, which looked as if they were swimming about on the water. The leaf farthest away was the largest, and to this the old toad swam with Thumbelina in the walnut shell. The tiny Thumbelina woke up very early in the morning, and when she saw she was where she was, she began to cry bitterly. For on every side of the great green leaf was water, and she could not get to the land. The old toad was down under the marsh, decorating her room with rushes and yellow marigold leaves to make it very grand for her new daughter-in-law. Then she swam out with her ugly son to the leaf where Thumbelina lay. She wanted to fetch the pretty cradle to put it into her room before Thumbelina herself came there. The old toad bowed low in the water before her and said, "Here is my son. You shall marry him and live in great magnificence down under the marsh." "Croak, croak, croak," was all that the son could say. Then they took up the neat little cradle and swam away with it. But Thumbelina sat alone on the great green leaf and wept, for she did not want to live with the clammy toad or marry her ugly son. The little fishies swimming around under the water had seen the toad quite plainly and heard what she had said, so they put up their heads to the little girl. When they saw her, they thought her so very pretty that they were very sorry she should go down with the ugly toad to live. No, that must not happen. They assembled in the water around the green stalk which supported the leaf on which she was sitting, and nibbled the stem in two. Away floated the leaf down the stream, bearing Thumbelina far beyond the reach of the toad. Thumbelina sailed past several towns, and little birds sitting in the bushes saw her and sang, "What a pretty little girl!" The leaf floated further and further away. Thus Thumbelina left her native land. A beautiful little white butterfly fluttered above her, and at last settled on the leaf. Thumbelina pleased him, and she too was delighted, for now the toads could not reach her, and it was so beautiful where she was traveling. The sun shone on the water and made it sparkle like the brightest silver. She took off her sash and tied one end around the butterfly. On the other she fastened to the leaf, so that it now glided along with her faster than ever. A great cockchafer came flying past. He caught sight of Thumbelina, and in a moment had put his arms around her slender waist and had flown off with her to a tree. The green leaf floated away down the stream, and the butterfly with it, for he was fastened to the leaf and could not get loose from it. Oh dear, how terrified poor little Thumbelina was when the cockchafer flew off with her to the tree. But she was especially distressed on the beautiful butterfly's account, as she had tied him fast so that he could not get away, for he must she had tied him fast so that if he could not get away, he must starve to death. But the cockchafer did not trouble himself about that. He sat down with her on a large green leaf, gave her the honey out of the flowers to eat, and told her that she was very pretty, although she wasn't in the least like a cockchafer. Later on, all the cockchafers who lived in the same tree came to pay calls. They examined Thumbelina closely and remarked, "Why, she has only two legs! How very miserable!" "She has no feelers!" cried another. "How ugly she is!" said the lady chauffeurs. And yet Thumbelina was really very pretty. The cockchafer had stolen her, knew this very well, but when he heard all the ladies saying that she was ugly, he began to think so too, and would not keep her. She might go wherever she liked, and put her in. So he flew down from the tree with her and put her on a daisy. There she sat and wept, because she was so ugly that the cockchafer would have nothing to do with her, and yet she was the most beautiful creature imaginable, so soft and delicate, like the loveliest rose leaf. The whole summer poor little Thumbelina lived alone in the great wood. She plaited a bed for herself out of blades of grass, and hung it up under a clover leaf. so that way she was protected from the rain. She gathered honey from the flowers for food and drank the dew on the leaves every morning. Thus the summer and autumn passed, but then came winter, the long, cold winter. All the birds had sung so sweetly about her had flown away. The trees shed their leaves, the flowers died, the great clover leaf under which she had lived curled up, and nothing remained of it but withered stalk. She was terribly cold, for her clothes were ragged, and she herself was so small and thin. Poor little Thumbelina, she would surely be frozen to death. It began to snow, and every snowflake that fell on her was to her as a whole shovelful thrown on one of us, for we are so big, and she was only an inch high. She wrapped herself around in a dead leaf, but it was torn in the middle and gave her no warmth. She was trembling with the cold. Just outside the wood, where she was now living, lay a great cornfield, but the corn had been gone a long time. Only the dry, bare stubble was left standing in the frozen ground. This made a forest for her to wander about in. All at once she came across the door of a field mouse, who had a little hole under the cornstalk. There the mouse lived warm and snug, with a storeroom full of corn, a splendid kitchen and dining room. Poor little Thumbelina went up to the door and begged for a little piece of barley, for she had not eaten anything for the last 2 days.